You think your high school memories are just about classes and friends? Think again. I'm about to reveal the most overlooked power structure in American schools, one that determined your social fate before you even spoke to another student.
Every morning at 7:45 a.m., millions of American teenagers walked to a metal box that held more than just their textbooks. It held their status, their reputation, and sometimes their deepest secrets. But here's what's really insane. Your locker assignment wasn't random. Oh no, there was a whole underground system determining who got prime real estate and who got sent to social Siberia. I'm talking about a geographical hierarchy so complex it would make Manhattan real estate agents jealous. And if you went to American public school between 1990 and 2010, you were part of this system, whether you realized it or not. By the end of this video, you'll understand why Locker 247 could make you popular, while Locker 1847 could destroy your high school experience before it even began.
Let me blow your mind with something most adults have completely forgotten. High schools had their own version of Park Avenue and the Bronx, and it was all about location, location, location. First, you had the Golden Triangle, lockers within 50 feet of the main entrance, the popular classrooms, and the cafeteria. These weren't just convenient locations, these were thrones of power. If your locker was in the Golden Triangle, you were seen by everyone. Every popular kid walking to lunch, every athlete heading to practice, every crush you wanted to notice you, they all passed your locker multiple times a day. But here's where it gets really dark. Schools knew this. The administrators, the guidance counselors, the secretaries who made locker assignments, they weren't naive. They understood the social geography they were creating. Some schools claimed it was alphabetical. Others said it was by grade level or homeroom, but ask any American who went to high school in the 90s or 2000s and they'll tell you the truth. Somehow, someway, the popular kids always ended up in the Golden Triangle.
Now, here's where the story gets really twisted. I started digging into how locker assignments actually worked. And what I found will make you question everything about your high school experience. Picture this. It's registration day, August 2003. Sarah Martinez walks into the guidance office. She's new to the school, but her older sister was homecoming queen. Somehow, miraculously, Sarah gets locker 156, right across from the main staircase, prime Golden Triangle real estate. Same day, David Chen walks in. Honor roll student, but quiet, no connections. David gets locker 1342, basement level, next to the boiler room, down a hallway that smells like industrial cleaning supplies. Coincidence? Let me tell you about the recommendation system that most students never knew existed. Older siblings could recommend their friends for good locker locations. Popular teachers would whisper suggestions to the office staff. Athletic coaches had informal pullover assignments. Even janitors, yes, janitors, could influence where you spent the next 4 years of your life. But the most insidious part, some schools had a troublemaker exile system. Kids with discipline problems, learning difficulties, or just the wrong last name got systematically placed in what staff called the forgotten zones. I talked to a former school secretary who worked in Ohio from 1995 to 2008. She told me, off the record, that they kept lists, actual lists. Problem families, athletic priorities, academic standouts. And your locker assignment reflected which list you were on. So what made a locker location powerful? The answer is more complex than you think, and it reveals everything about how American high schools really worked. Zone 1, the Golden Triangle. We talked about this. Main entrance, cafeteria proximity, high traffic areas. These kids were the kings and queens of visibility. Zone 2, the athletic row. Lockers near the gymnasium and sports facilities. This was jock territory, and if you weren't on a team, you didn't belong. These lockers came with their own social perks. You got to see who was dating whom, who made varsity, who was getting recruited. Zone 3, the academic wing, near the honors classes, computer labs, library. Not glamorous, but respectable. These were the kids who would get into good colleges, and they knew it. But then came the exile zones. Zone 4, the basement. Underground lockers near the boiler room, storage areas, and forgotten classrooms. If your locker was here, you were literally and socially underground. Zone 5, the dead-end hallways. Lockers in corridors that led to nowhere. Old classrooms, unused wings, areas where teachers rarely patrolled. These became havens for kids who didn't fit anywhere else. And then there was the punishment row. And yes, this was real. Some schools deliberately placed troublemakers in a specific hallway where they could be watched. Your locker location became your scarlet letter. But here's what's really messed up. These zones created their own ecosystems. Popular kids would avoid the basement levels entirely. Academic kids felt uncomfortable in athletic row. The geography literally segregated the school's social classes. Your locker location was just the beginning. Who got assigned the lockers next to you? That could change everything. Meet Jennifer Walsh, class of '98 in Wisconsin. Jennifer was a quiet sophomore who got assigned a middle-tier locker. Nothing special, but not terrible either. Her locker neighbor? Katie Morrison, the junior class president and head cheerleader. Suddenly, Jennifer's locker became a meeting spot for the most popular kids in school. They'd gather around Katie's locker before and after classes, and Jennifer was right there, part of the conversations by proximity. Jennifer went from invisible to invited to parties, dating opportunities, and social events, all because of 18 inches of hallway real estate. But the neighbor lottery could destroy you just as easily. Tommy Rodriguez, class of '02 in Texas, got stuck next to Marcus Webb, the kid who brought weird smells, talked to himself, and had zero friends. Every day, Tommy had to navigate the social minefield of being associated with Marcus just because their last names were alphabetically close. Tommy started using his locker less and less, carrying everything in his backpack just to avoid the guilt by association. His back problems senior year, worth it to avoid social suicide. And then there were the locker neighbor romances.
Nothing, and I mean nothing, created more drama than locker-neighbor relationships. Picture this. Ashley and Brandon, neighbors by alphabet, strangers by choice. September of junior year, they're just two kids trying to remember their combinations. By October, they're sharing inside jokes between third and fourth period. By November, Ashley is decorating both their lockers for Brandon's football games. By December, they're the couple everyone talks about, the locker neighbors who found love 18 inches apart. Sweet story, right? Wait for it. March of senior year, Brandon cheats on Ashley with her former best friend. But here's the cruel twist. They still had to be locker neighbors for 3 more months. Every single day, Ashley had to watch Brandon flirt with other girls, literally right next to her personal space. She couldn't avoid him. She couldn't switch lockers. She was trapped in the most awkward social situation imaginable, displayed for the entire school to watch. I know kids who transferred schools over locker-neighbor breakups. I'm serious. The psychological torture of being forced into daily proximity with your ex, combined with the public nature of hallway drama, drove teenagers to desperate measures. But some schools had an even more twisted system. Deliberate social engineering through locker assignments. This is where the story gets really dark, because some school administrators thought they were social scientists. Roosevelt High School in Michigan, 1999 to 2003. The guidance counselor, Mrs. Patricia Hoffman, had a theory. She believed she could break up cliques and reduce bullying by strategically mixing locker assignments. Popular kids next to outcasts, athletes next to drama nerds, rich kids next to scholarship students. She thought forced proximity would create understanding and friendship. It was a disaster. Instead of breaking down barriers, it created new forms of psychological warfare. Popular kids would deliberately make their unpopular neighbors' lives miserable to force them to avoid their lockers. Bullying became more targeted, more personal, more cruel. Sarah Kim, class of '01, was placed next to 3 different popular girls over 4 years as part of this integration experiment. Each placement ended with Sarah being excluded, humiliated, or outright harassed until she stopped using her locker entirely. The most devastating case was Rachel and Rebecca Martinez. Rachel was popular, cheerleader, student council, the works. Rebecca was quiet, studious, preferred books to parties. Mrs. Hoffman thought it would be character building to separate them, putting Rachel in the academic wing and Rachel in the golden triangle. The twins, who had been best friends their entire lives, grew apart. Different social circles, different daily routines, different experiences. By senior year, they barely spoke. Their mother told me it took them years after graduation to rebuild their relationship. Mrs. Hoffman retired in 2003. The locker assignment system went back to random, alphabetical sorting. But the damage was done to dozens of students who were used as guinea pigs in her social experiment. But here's something most adults never discovered. Lockers weren't just storage. They were the foundation of an underground economy that would make Wall Street jealous. First, there was the rental market. Kids with prime locations would rent space in their lockers to less fortunate students. A few inches of shelf space in a golden triangle locker could cost $20 a month in 2003 money. Then came the trading system. Good locker locations were currency. I'll do your math homework for a semester if you switch lockers with me. I'll give you my disc man and $50 for your spot near the cafeteria. But the real money was in locker services. Kids would pay popular kids to deliver messages to lockers in high-traffic areas. Love notes, party invitations, even rumors. Everything flowed through the locker postal system. Jimmy Chen, class of 2004 in California, made $300 a month running what he called Locker Express. Students would pay him to deliver notes, small gifts, and messages throughout the school. His golden triangle locker became the unofficial post office of Valley High School. And then there were the locker decoration services. Popular kids with artistic talent would charge $50 to $100 to decorate other students' lockers for homecoming, birthdays, or just to boost their social image. But the darkest part of the locker economy? The information trade.
Your locker location determined what you could see, hear, and learn about the school's social ecosystem. And some kids turned that into power. Maria Santos had locker 178, right at the intersection of 3 major hallways. From her location, she could see the main entrance, the path to the cafeteria, and the route to the gymnasium. Maria saw everything. Who was dating whom? Who was getting in trouble? Who was sneaking out during lunch? Who was crying in the hallway? Who was fighting with their parents? Maria became the unofficial intelligence network of West High School. And she monetized it. Maria would sell information. $10 to know if your crush was dating someone. $20 to find out who is spreading rumors about you. $50 for advance warning if you were about to get in trouble with teachers or administration. But Maria's operation was small time compared to what happened at Lincoln High in Ohio. 3 students, Brad, Michelle, and Tony, had lockers in what they called the command center. Their lockers were positioned to monitor different social ecosystems. Brad watched the popular crowd, Michelle monitored the academic kids, and Tony kept track of the troublemakers and outcasts. They created what they called the network, an information sharing system that gave them unprecedented social power. They knew about cheating scandals before teachers did. They knew about pregnancies before parents did. They knew about college acceptances, family problems, and secret relationships before anyone else. The network didn't just collect information, they used it. They could make or break reputations, relationships, and social standing with strategic rumors and perfectly timed revelations. And the most twisted part? They recruited students from other locker zones to be their correspondents. Kids in the basement levels, the dead-end hallways, the punishment rows, they became informants in exchange for social protection and inclusion. Lincoln High School's class of '05 was controlled by 3 teenagers with strategically placed lockers and an information network that would make the CIA proud. If locker location was about geography, locker decoration was about psychological warfare. This wasn't just putting up a few photos and calling it cute. This was social signaling at its most brutal and sophisticated. First level, basic decoration. Photos of friends, motivational quotes, maybe a small mirror. This was survival-level social signaling, proof that you had friends and weren't a complete outcast. Second level, themed decoration. Color-coordinated magnets, seasonal changes, organized layouts. This showed you had time, money, and enough social confidence to invest in your personal space. Third level, interactive decoration. Whiteboards for friends to leave messages, rotating photo displays, birthday countdown calendars. This proved you were popular enough that people actually visited your locker regularly. But fourth level was warfare. Meet Chelsea Morrison, class of '03 in Arizona. Chelsea's locker was a multimedia experience. Professional photos, LED lighting, a sound system for her CD player, custom magnetic poetry sets, and a rotating display of gifts from her various boyfriends. But Chelsea's masterpiece was her friend wall, a carefully curated display of photos showing her with every popular person in school. Not just any photos, strategic images that implied intimacy, friendship, and social status. Other girls started copying Chelsea's style. Soon, the entire Golden Triangle looked like a competition between interior designers with unlimited budgets and serious psychological issues. The pressure became so intense that some kids took out credit cards to fund their locker decorations. Parents complained to the school board about the locker decoration arms race that was driving families into debt. But the real victim was Jenny Walsh, a sophomore who couldn't afford the decoration competition. Every day she had to open her plain, undecorated locker right next to Chelsea's multimedia shrine to popularity. Jenny started eating lunch in the library to avoid the twice-daily humiliation of her bare metal locker box next to Chelsea's social media showcase. The psychological impact was devastating. Years later, Jenny told me she still feels anxiety in organized, decorated spaces because they remind her of her locker inadequacy. Everything changed when cell phones and social media invaded the locker ecosystem. Suddenly, your locker wasn't just physical space, it was content for your online presence. Locker tours became Instagram posts, decorated lockers became TikTok videos. Your locker location and decoration became part of your digital identity. But social media also exposed the hierarchy in ways that had never been visible before. Kids started documenting the differences between Golden Triangle lockers and basement exile locations. The inequality became undeniable. Madison Cooper, class of '09, created a viral video called Locker Location Racism that showed the stark differences between predominantly white, wealthy students' prime locations and minority students' basement assignments. The video forced her school district to investigate their assignment process. What they found was shocking. Decades of informal discrimination, unofficial policies, and systemic bias that had segregated students by race, economic status, and social class. But the most interesting change was how technology began to make locker location less important. Kids could coordinate through text messages, share photos instantly, and maintain social connections without physical proximity. The class of 2010 was the first generation to experience both the old locker hierarchy and the digital revolution that started to break it down. Some schools began allowing students to request locker changes through online portals. Others implemented lottery systems to ensure random assignment.
A few progressive districts eliminated lockers entirely, recognizing them as outdated infrastructure that created more problems than they solved.
So why does any of this matter? Why should we care about where teenagers kept their textbooks? Because the locker hierarchy was never really about lockers. It was about power, privilege, and the brutal efficiency with which American institutions sort people into categories before they even have a chance to define themselves. Think about it. On your first day of high school, before you'd spoken to a single classmate, taken a single test, or joined a single club, the school had already decided your social geography. They'd placed you in a physical location that would influence every interaction, every relationship, every opportunity for the next 4 years. Kids learned that their worth could be determined by factors completely outside their control, that geography was destiny, that proximity to power was more important than personal character. And these lessons didn't end at graduation. The adults who learned to accept unfair locker assignments became adults who accepted unfair seating arrangements at work. The teenagers who learned that location determined social value became adults who judged people by their neighborhoods, their offices, their zip codes. The kids who learned to game the locker system became adults who understood how to navigate informal power structures. The ones who suffered in exile became adults who struggled with self-advocacy and territorial confidence. But here's the most important part. The students who recognized the locker hierarchy as artificial and unfair became the adults who question systems, challenge inequality, and work to create more just institutions. I want to talk directly to everyone watching this who survived the American high school locker system. If you were Golden Triangle royalty, if you had the prime real estate that made you visible and envied, I want you to think about how you used that privilege. Did you welcome the kids from the basement levels? Did you share your social advantages? Or did you protect your territory at others' expense? If you were middle tier, if you had adequate but not prestigious locker placement, remember the choices you made. Did you aspire to move up by stepping on those below you? Or did you use your stable position to help others navigate the system? And if you were exiled to the basements, the dead ends, the punishment rows, if your locker location told you every day that you didn't matter, I want you to know that the system was wrong. Your worth was never determined by your hallway assignment. But most importantly, I want all of you to recognize how these experiences shaped the way you think about space, status, and belonging. Do you still feel anxiety in certain physical environments? Do you still judge people by their location in social or professional hierarchies? Do you still believe that proximity to power is more important than personal integrity? These patterns didn't end when you graduated. They followed you into college dorms, office buildings, neighborhood choices, and social circles. Here's what I want you to do right now. Look around your current life and identify the locker hierarchies that still exist. Where do you sit in meetings? How do you choose your gym locker? What about your parking spot, your desk location, your seat on airplanes? Are you still playing by the rules you learned in high school hallways? If you have kids in school right now, pay attention to their locker stories. Ask them about their location, their neighbors, their decoration choices. Help them understand that these systems are choices, not natural laws. If you're in a position of authority, at work, in your community, in educational settings, remember that how you assign physical space sends powerful messages about who matters and who belongs. And if you're still carrying emotional scars from your locker assignment days, remember that you get to choose your own space now. You get to decide what proximity means, what decoration expresses, what location signifies. You know what's beautiful about being an adult? Nobody can assign you a locker anymore. Nobody can tell you that you belong in the basement because of your last name,
or your family's income, or how quiet you were in ninth grade. Nobody can force you to decorate your space to compete with people who never cared about you anyway. Nobody can make you settle for middle-tier treatment because you're grateful just to be included. The American high school locker system was brutal, unfair, and psychologically damaging. But it was also temporary, and everyone who survived it learned something valuable: how to recognize systems of power, how to navigate unfair hierarchies, and how to decide when to play by the rules and when to rewrite them entirely. The kids in the Golden Triangle aren't automatically winning at life. The kids in the basement exile aren't automatically losing. And the kids in the middle learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the safest place is exactly where you choose to build your own kingdom. So here's to everyone who survived the locker lottery, good or bad. Here's to everyone who learned that geography isn't destiny, that proximity isn't worth, and that the most important real estate you'll ever own is the space you create for yourself and others. Your locker was just the beginning. Your life is the whole building. And this time, you get to choose every door. If this story was yours too, subscribe to @BackToAmerica90s2000s, because we're just getting started uncovering the systems that shaped us and the power we have to reshape them. Welcome to the Golden Triangle of your own making.